clear plan to really address the global challenge that we face, the Liberals have already put in place individuals on the advisory body that is contemplated in this bill. How disrespectful to Parliament can you be by putting in place a panel already that is envisioned by the legislation, which presumes that the legislation will pass in its present form? Madam Speaker, I look forward to continuing these remarks at the next available opportunity.
Yes, it won't be right after question period after all. It will be the next time that this bill is before the House, and the honourable member will have 4 minutes. Statements by members, déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Burnaby North Seymour.
Madam Speaker, it is important to address complex issues like climate change head on, not just for the benefit of our children, but for all future generations on this planet. Our government has taken more action on fighting climate change and protecting the environment than any other government in Canadian history, and we will continue to increase our ambition to do more. We have introduced legislation to ensure Canadians have a right to a healthy environment. We put forward a detailed plan to exceed our 2030 emissions targets, and we are creating a credible path to becoming a net zero emissions nation. In addition to our revenue neutral price on pollution, we've invested more than $100 billion on building a clean and green future. I would encourage everyone to read Canada's ambitious and transparent plan for the climate, as it is now one of the most detailed plans in the entire world. For details on what we're doing in Burnaby and North Vancouver, please read my quarterly reports, which are available at terrybeachmp.ca. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Cariboo Prince George.
2 years and another political scandal later, this Prime Minister finally tabled a budget. For Canadians across the country, British Columbians in my region, this budget was a massive letdown. Workers in our forestry, tourism, seasonal industries, workers that have lost their jobs or had their wages slashed were abandoned and left behind once again by this Liberal government. For Canadians struggling with mental health issues or opioid addiction, this budget misses the mark. Job losses and endless lockdowns because of a failure to vaccinate Canadians continues to worsen our mental health crisis. We're battling a third wave of this pandemic because of this Prime Minister's failures. And the reality is this: less than 3% of our population has been vaccinated. The Prime Minister had to take from third world countries to secure what little vaccines we have today. Sadly, Canadians are stuck hearing Liberal backbenchers take Twitter victory laps about how they've exceeded their targets. Canadians are angry and they're frustrated. Let's face it, all the Prime Minister is hoping for is a self-engineered pandemic election. You want proof? Just look at the Liberal election platform. Budget.
The honourable member for Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Madam Speaker, violence in the home is an unfortunate reality for too many women in Canada, and the COVID-19 pandemic has made it more frequent and more severe. There's been much focus from our government to tackle this tragic issue, having an emergency debate in the House to my tabling of a report with recommendations by the Justice Committee to budget 2021 investments in combating gender-based violence. In my city, Peel Police, under the leadership of Chief Nishant Durayappa, has joined forces with Safe Centres of Peel and social service agencies to create a 50-officer-strong intimate partner violence unit, offering greater support for survivors through a trauma-informed approach and to reduce rates of violence. Collaborative initiatives like this are milestones in the right direction to combat intimate partner violence. Thank you to the women and men of Peel Police and Chief Durayappa for your leadership in building safe communities. Thank you.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Avignon, La Métis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the region where Quebecers are happiest is Gaspésie. That's what the Léger polling company says with its Quebec Happiness Index. According to the poll, the Gaspésie Magdalen Islands region is the best place to live. No one who lives here is surprised. It's hard not to be happy when you spend time daily near the rivers, the bay, mountains, forests, and of course, the people. Gaspésie isn't just a great place to spend your holidays. It's a place where it's wonderful to live and dream big. The pandemic has made all of us realize that it's important to be close to nature. But in the Gaspésie region, we've already known that for a long time. Gaspésie is a beautiful and vast region full of young, dynamic people who are moving there and prioritizing good work-life balance and quality of life. Happiness does exist, and you will find it in my beautiful region. The honourable member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to celebrate the 200th anniversary of a historic monument in the Hochelaga neighborhood, the Château du Frêne, which represents 200 years of history in the eastern part of Montreal. Today, it has been turned into a museum dedicated to the preservation of the history and heritage of the East End. Oscar was one of the two brothers who founded the chateau, and he played an important role in the development of the sector in the East End. He directed many companies to manufacture shoes, and he played an important role to create a francophone culture in Montreal. And the other brother, Marius, also participated in town planning in the neighborhood and supervised important projects. They both were important players in the economic history of the eastern part of Montreal, and our government recently recognized in the budget this long history of industrial activity. We will continue to work hard to revitalize the sector for tomorrow. After renovations and the pandemic, Château du Frêne is finally open, and I would invite everyone to visit and discover the history of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Number 4, Red Deer, Mountain View.
Mr. Speaker, the Korean War was one of the most significant chapters in our country's proud military history, and I want to honor two veterans from our community who will be missed with their recent passings. Don Holloway's lifetime of military service included time in the Korean War as a combat engineer. His dedication to veterans and the community was recognized with the Red Deer's Honorary Senior Citizens of the Year Award. Lance Corporal Smiley Douglas was awarded a military medal for saving his comrades' lives when he picked up a grenade and threw it clear of them. He was also a friend and a neighbor. He was my first recollection of what war was, juxtaposed against an infectious laugh and sense of humor over the hand he lost in battle. I remember my father saying that Smiley could do more work with one hand than most men could do with two. In moments like these, we pause to humanize the courage of those who went not without fear into the face of war. May we honor these men in death through the examples they set in life with bravery, love of community, kindness, and generosity, lest we forget.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honor to rise in the House and recognize two of our local newspapers from Waterloo Region who are both celebrating their 25th anniversary in 2021. The Kitchener Citizen provides over 60,000 Kitchener households with local news each month. I want to thank editors Carrie DeBrone and Helen Hall and all volunteers and contributors for their hard work over the past 25 years. And also celebrating 25 years is the Woolwich Observer, which serves Woolwich and Wellesley townships here in Kitchener-Conestoga. It's an independently owned weekly paper that brings local content, news, opinions, and a crossword puzzle. So thank you to Joe Merlihan, the whole team at the Observer, past and present, for their hard work and dedication supporting our local communities. Local journalism remains an integral part of our community here in Kitchener-Conestoga and across Canada. So congratulations to the staff and volunteer of the Kitchener Citizen and the Woolwich Observer for 25 years of dedicated service to our communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, every 3 days someone dies a preventable death waiting for an organ transplant. We celebrate Be a Donor Month in April here in Ontario to raise awareness for organ and tissue donation. By registering to become a donor, you have the power to save a life. In fact, one organ donor has the potential to save 8 lives and enhance 75 more through tissue donation. And although more than 90% of Ontarians are in favor of donations, only 35% have actually registered. This month, let's make sure that we change that. I encourage the residents in my riding of Humber River Black Creek and all the people of Ontario to show their support by registering their consent for organ and tissue donation. You can register in only 2 minutes by visiting beadonor.ca. All you need is your health card number. We've spoken so much about what we need to do to protect each other through this pandemic. Now let's save more lives by registering to become an organ and tissue donors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today on behalf of the incredible people of Southwest Saskatchewan, many of who are continually asking for a plan to safely reopen the economy, get Canadians back to work, and secure our future. So I was disappointed that Budget 2021 included none of the above. Instead, it is proposing a reimagined Canadian economy that dabbles in risky economic ideas, like abandoning Canada's world-leading sustainable natural resource industries, leaving our economy in a precarious position and alienating Western Canadians even more. Canada is now sitting at over $1 trillion in federal debt, meaning the average Canadian family owes over $77,000 in federal debt. While the forecast looks grim, I want to assure my constituents that they can be confident with our Conservative recovery plan. We will bolster manufacturing at home, support the resource sector, get Canadians back to work, and secure the future for you and your children without this Prime Minister's Great Reset.
L'honorable député d'Alfred Pellan.
The honourable member for Alfred Pellan. Mr. Speaker, seniors in Alfred Pellan have been seriously affected by the pandemic. For many of them, this has been a terrible period of lockdown, isolation, and a lack of social activities. Today, I'd like to talk about the New Horizons funding for seniors in Laval, which totals nearly $509,000 for 41 new community projects. There will be 13 organizations in Alfred Pellan, which will be sharing more than $114,000 to offer our seniors activities that will enable them, among other things, to develop their digital skills, to spend time together virtually, and reduce their isolation. During this difficult period for our seniors, I would like to thank the organizations that are prioritizing the well-being of our seniors. I'd like to thank the volunteers who are bringing joy to our seniors, and I'd like to thank our seniors for their valuable contributions to our communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, in what began as a mediocre attempt at legislation to level the playing field between internet streaming giants and the traditional Canadian broadcasters, the Minister of Heritage assured us that all Bill C-10 would do would not be some draconian tool of the state to limit Canadian freedom of expression on the internet. He actually promised that his legislation was not interested in things like when his great uncle posts pictures of his cats. In the original bill, there were exemptions to protect the freedoms of Canadians posting their online content. Just the other day, the minister ordered the section removed. The minister muses about granting himself the power to remove internet content that he deems objectionable, and now he is granting authority to the CRTC to control what Canadians post online. Conservatives will continue to fight for the freedoms of all Canadians, even for the minister's great uncle's right to continue posting pictures of his cats, whether the minister actually likes them or not.
Well, member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The recovery plan the Liberal put forward last week threatened Canada's future. The Markham Unionville residents are calling and are concerned that the Liberal plan will only make things worse. We need a new plan that will recover 1 million jobs COVID-19 destroyed, returning transparency to Parliament and stronger consequences for corruption, tackling the mental health crisis the pandemic has created, something the Liberal plan shamefully ignores altogether. Any recovery needs to include looking ahead. That means getting the supplies together to fight the next pandemic and getting our debt in order so that we have the resources to help Canadians in the next time of need. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party of Canada has a plan that does all this. It is a plan to secure jobs, accountability, mental health, the country, and the economy. It is a plan that will secure the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Churchill, Kiwatnuk-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc for over a year. Canada has now lost 24,000 people, loved ones, friends, or community members. In our region, there is a ray of hope as people 18 and over can get the vaccine. First Nations have been leading the vaccine effort here. I acknowledge the leadership of chiefs, councillors, frontline workers, MKO. In December, I joined the MP for Vancouver Kingsway in pushing for urgent federal action to get vaccines to Indigenous and Northern communities. The vaccine is critical, but it's also not enough. We need paid sick days for all workers. The death of 13-year-old Emily Villegas must be a wake-up call. Working people, many in industrial workplaces, racialized, immigrant, have paid for their this crisis with their lives, and now their children's. Coming out of this, we need a different world where the elderly, First Nations, and the working class are not exploited and marginalized, a world where lives matter before profit. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Manicouagan.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to express my admiration for the incredible courage that a young man in my riding showed. On the 7th of April, there was a fire in a building in Sacré-Cœur. Louis Tremblay, a 15-year-old, screwed his courage to the sticking point, and he saved his neighbor, a person with reduced mobility. Thanks to what he did, despite the fact that the building was almost completely destroyed, no one was hurt. Mr. Speaker, it warms my heart to know that one of my constituents did something so altruistic. In these situations, we can really see the incredible strength that human beings show when they want to help their neighbor. Despite the danger and pressure, Loïc, you didn't hesitate. You saved someone's life. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. People in the Côte-Nord will always need examples of courage like yours, which help solidify the ties that bind us. You are a real hero, Loïc. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, this ongoing pandemic has been hard on my constituents in Kelowna Lake Country and many Canadians. Here in BC, we are facing strong lockdown measures once again due to the Prime Minister's failures to secure our borders from COVID hotspots and procure vaccines. BC is now home to the largest outbreak of the Brazilian variant of COVID-19 outside of Brazil itself. For over a year, I've listened to distressed constituents not able to get a vaccine, rapid test, or COVID test in a timely manner. They're laid off or on the verge of losing their business. They're very concerned about isolation in continual lockdowns affecting their elderly parents or children. I've listened to heartbreaking stories of loved ones committing suicide. Many people have lost hope. Conservatives will establish a Canada Mental Health Action Plan to increase mental health funding to the provinces and provide employer incentives for mental health coverage for employees. Canada's Conservatives have a recovery plan to secure mental health, secure our economy, and secure our future.
The honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, my start in politics was as downtown Hamilton City Councillor, and it became immediately apparent that there was an affordable housing crisis. The problem dated back to a time when social housing and administration costs were downloaded by the provincial government. I personally met with constituents who were struggling to find housing, and those who were housed were often living in dilapidated, unsafe units. This experience stayed with me. So today, I am so proud to be part of a government that is making historic investments in housing across our country. Yesterday, we announced that Hamilton will receive $145 million to repair and renovate over 6,000 units of social housing. This is further to $97 million, which will be used to create 1,942 units. These investments are city-changing, an example of how municipalities, provinces, and the federal government can work together to change lives for the better.
Oral questions. Question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, le ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Defence was aware of allegations of sexual misconduct against General Vance in 2018. The Clerk of the Privy Council was aware. The Prime Minister's senior advisor knew it. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff knew it. Was the Prime Minister also aware? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I've said for a long time, yes, there was a complaint against General Vance, but there was no one in my office or in Minister Sajan's office who knew the nature of the complaint. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we need to improve processes. We need to ensure that we can create an environment in which people who have complaints feel supported to come forward. That is always what we will try to ensure. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence was aware of sexual misconduct allegations against General Vance in 2018. The Clerk of the Privy Council was aware. The Senior Advisor, Mr. Marquez, to the Prime Minister was aware. The Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister was aware in 2018. Mr. Speaker, was the Prime Minister aware of sexual misconduct allegations in 2018?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is putting forward is simply untrue. While there was awareness that there was a complaint against General Vance, there was no awareness that it was, in fact, a Me Too complaint of a sexual nature. These are issues that we have continued to work on seriously as a government. And I need to highlight that the leader of the official opposition had heard a rumor of misconduct back in 2015, told his staff, who then told PMO, and they told the Privy Council office. It is the exact same process that played out in 2015 under the previous Conservative government as played out in our government. But we, Mr. Speaker, have taken far more actions to change the culture for the better of our military.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Let's explore those actions, Mr. Speaker. For months, the Prime Minister has said he was not aware of specific allegations. Today, he just told the House that his office was not aware that they were of a Me Too nature, Mr. Speaker. The only trouble is his team used the term sexual harassment in their emails about this incident in March 2018, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister be honest with this House and with the women serving bravely in our Canadian Armed Forces that he was aware and he failed them for 3 years?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as a government, we have consistently stood up for survivors, stood up against harassment and intimidation in federal workplaces across the country and indeed in the Canadian Armed Forces. We have made significant investments in improving systems and accountability, and we will continue to do that. In 2015, when a complaint came forward, we forwarded that to the Privy Council office so that they could do the follow-up necessary. But unfortunately, the Ombudsman was not able to reveal the full extent because he didn't have permission. We need to create a system in which people feel supported to come forward.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is now using the term we, so I take it that he was aware in 2018 that his office was emailing with Mr. Walburn with respect to sexual harassment. Does the Prime Minister in the House of Commons suggest that Canadian women, when they use the term Me Too, are not referring to sexual harassment? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and his team were aware. Why did he cover it up?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning of my leadership, from my beginning as Prime Minister, I have consistently stood up to defend people who are facing situations of misconduct or sexual harassment, and I have always done that every step of the way, and my office has always taken that just as seriously. We will always stand with survivors. We will always ensure justice and support for them every step of the way. You need simply to look at our record, and we will continue to do even more to do just that.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I am looking at the records from his office when they used the term sexual harassment, yet today the Prime Minister, maybe has new notes now, Mr. Speaker, is suggesting they didn't think it was a Me Too allegation. His own team was describing it as sexual harassment, Mr. Speaker. The Privy Council clerk knew. The Chief of Staff.
I'm going to interrupt. We'll let the Honourable Member start his question over. I'll just check to see what the point of order is. The Honourable Member for... We have quite a number of...
On Zoom.
We have quite a number. We'll start with the Honourable Member from Abbotsford, who's at the top of the list.
The chamber's on mute, Mr. Speaker. We can't hear the chamber virtually.
Okay. What? Okay, we'll just...
Or in reality. Good point. Maybe he can.
Test. Can everyone hear? Very good. We'll return to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems with this cover-up, the country's been on mute with respect to these allegations for 3 years. So, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows that his own office was using the term sexual harassment with respect to this allegation in 2018. All of the senior members of his office knew and used the term sexual harassment. So it's embarrassing to suggest that he wasn't aware that it was a Me Too style complaint. Mr. Speaker, the clerk of the Privy Council knew. His senior advisor, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister of Canada knew for 3 years. Why did she lie to him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my office and my Chief of Staff specifically has from the very beginning always taken extraordinarily seriously any allegations of personal and professional misconduct, particularly allegations of a sexual nature. We have consistently stood up in defense of survivors, consistently pushed back against cultures that tolerate and accept marginalization or diminishment of women or other minorities. That is something that we will continue to stand up for. We will continue to defend anyone who comes forward with stories of allegations of misconduct. That is what this government has always stood for.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said yesterday, when it comes to the Port of Montreal, special legislation is not a solution. Rather, it's a proof of incompetence. In 5 minutes on the telephone, the Prime Minister could have avoided this strike. The union said clearly that if the employer would compromise on the shifts, that there would not be a strike. So the Prime Minister could have called to make that happen. So will the Prime Minister, or rather can the Prime Minister, avoid serious economic losses at the Port of Montreal and avoid this special legislation and by picking up the phone? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we often hear the Bloc rise in the House to talk about the fact that they're going to defend the interests of Quebecers. Well, here's an opportunity for them to move from talk to action, but they're not going to do that. So will they really support our bill, which would allow for the resumption of activities at the Port of Montreal and would set up a mediation process, a neutral mediation process to resolve the problems and lead to a new collective agreement? Yes or no? Well, I'm sure the answer is no. They won't take action on behalf of Quebecers. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, can you tell the Prime Minister that this is not a question of parties, Liberal or Bloc. This is a question of the Port of Montreal. He just needs to pick up the phone. Rather than acting like a Conservative dressed in red, he should actually consider the workers' interests. He should pick up the phone, take 5 minutes, and avoid the strike. This is going to cost $30,000 to $50,000 for people who use the Port of Montreal. So why didn't he just call the employer to fix the problem? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is nonsense. For years, we have been encouraging negotiation at the table. We have been encouraging the different parties to reach a common agreement. They didn't manage. It's only at the very end of the process that we've seen we're going to be dealing with very serious consequences, not only for the Quebec economy, but for Quebecers as well. So that's why we need to intervene to force mediation. We need to force a neutral arbitration that will find a solution. The Bloc has an opportunity to support this bill. Will they do it? Apparently not. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Workers at the Port of Montreal want to have a collective agreement, and that's their right. But instead of helping them, the Prime Minister will force them to return to work. The President of the Union wrote to the Prime Minister saying that this type of legislation would infringe on workers' rights. Will the Prime Minister listen to the demands of the workers and withdraw this back-to-work legislation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for years now, we have been encouraging and ensuring that those negotiations happen at the negotiating table between the employer and the employees. It's the role of the government to do that, and that's what we did. Now, we've reached a point where the negotiations are breaking down. We're at risk of harming not only Quebec and Canada's economy, but thousands of citizens as well. So yes, we're going to take action, not to impose a contract on anyone, but to allow for neutral arbitration that will lead to a new agreement.
For Burnaby South.
The most vulnerable people in our society continue to be those who get sick and end up dying. Experts agree that improving the federal paid sick leave program will save lives. But the Prime Minister seems content to just sit on the sidelines and not do anything to improve it. Government's own forecasts show that they're sitting on over $4 billion of unspent money on their federal paid sick leave program. So why won't the Prime Minister stop sitting on the sidelines, show leadership, improve the paid sick leave program, and save lives?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we did move forward with federal emergency sick leave as of last year for 2 weeks at $500 a week, and we added another 2 weeks. The challenge, Mr. Speaker, is the best paid sick leave is that goes through employers, and we're working right now, the Minister of Finance is working with the province of Ontario to help them bring in sick leave through their employers. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we brought in federally regulated employer sick leave in September of 2019. Unfortunately, the NDP had voted against it in 2018, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Leflore. Mr. Speaker, while many countries are in the process of coming out of lockdown, in Canada things are very different. We're locking down again. Curfews are in effect and hospitals are overflowing. Why are we in this situation? Because we're struggling to get vaccines. Only 3% of Canadians have received their 2 doses. Yet the Prime Minister says that he wouldn't change anything when it comes to his handling of the pandemic, despite the fact that there were many things that he could have done to prevent this tragedy. Will the Prime Minister admit that, unlike what he says, he could have gotten vaccines on time? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives' narrative here omits a number of facts. Vaccine production was increasing in January and February. We exceeded our first quarter projections. We are 3rd out of G20 countries when it comes to administering vaccines. So we need a multifaceted approach in order to fight the virus. Vaccines, PPE, and health protocols. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Leflore. Mr. Speaker, a stable and predictable vaccine supply, increased border control, and sufficient rapid testing are just a few of the things that the Prime Minister could have done differently. And speaking of things he could have done better, the budget. In the midst of a pandemic, he was unable to provide stable, predictable, unconditional health transfers to the provinces, even though that was their main request. How can he explain his reckless spending, but then when it comes time to helping provinces with their health, he's stingy? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way. We've indeed been there for Quebec, like all provinces and territories, whether it was the $19 billion Safe Restart Fund, Mr. Speaker, additional money for mental health and addiction support, Mr. Speaker, whether it was purchasing all of the PPE, all of the therapeutics, all of the testing, Mr. Speaker, indeed all of the vaccines. We've been there for Quebec and for Quebecers, and we will not hesitate to be there until we get through this together.
The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's statement to the media today regarding what he knew about the nature of the allegations against General Vance contradicts everything we've heard so far. Multiple witnesses have testified at Defense Committee that the allegations were sexual misconduct. The Prime Minister's staff were copied on emails from the Privy Council office that specifically stated sexual harassment. Does the Prime Minister really expect Canadians to believe he knew nothing about the allegations against General Vance?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has absolutely no tolerance against any type of misconduct, and something that we have focused on. Mr. Speaker, I find it rich that the leader of the official opposition and member opposite are bringing this issue up when the leader of the opposition knew of issues like this with General Vance, but the previous government made the selection to select General Vance as CDS anyway. Mr. Speaker, we will take bold action for culture change. We have a lot more work to do, and we will get it done. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, actions speak louder than words. The Prime Minister may say that he stands for women, but his actions show that he's part of the problem, not part of the solution. His Chief of Staff knew about the allegations of sexual misconduct against General Vance. His Defense Minister knew. The entire senior leadership of his department knew. But he did nothing for 3 years. Why did the Prime Minister fail to act on allegations of sexual misconduct at the highest level in Canada's military?
Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. In this matter, we followed a process that had been laid out by the previous government. I instructed my Chief of Staff to get in touch with PMO and the Privy Council office, and they in turn to launch and look into this matter. And a similar path was done in 2015, again, as I stated, Mr. Speaker, by the leader of the opposition. In terms of taking action, Mr. Speaker, we have outlined additional $236 million to combat sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. We are taking real action. We know that one more work needs to be done, and we will get it done. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, just as other countries are beating us when it comes to vaccinating their citizens, they're also beating us by giving their economies a shot in the arm. The UK is investing in a massive infrastructure revolution. Italy is unveiling the mother of all regulatory reforms, and France and Germany are cutting taxes. What did Canada's recent budget do? Run up generational debt while neglecting strategic investments for long-term growth. Why is this government setting up our economy for post-pandemic failure?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to my friend, his argument is self-defeating. On the one hand, he says we should be spending more. On the other, he says we should be spending too much. The reality is we've made target investments from the very beginning of this pandemic to make sure that businesses could keep their doors open and have workers remain on the payroll. Going forward, our recovery plan is making continued target investments to ensure more women can take part in the economy, to make sure young people have an opportunity to take part in the economy. And yes, it will also invest in infrastructure to create jobs in communities from coast to coast to coast. Canadians can rest assured we have had their backs from the beginning, and we won't take our foot off the gas until this recovery is complete.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for Canadians, this budget will not deliver economic growth. The growth we will see is not build back better. It's build back bigger. Bigger debt, bigger deficits, bigger spending, bigger government. And with inflation around the corner, higher interest rates and higher taxes are a real worry for families who can't afford housing or struggle with debt. Why does this Liberal government not see the harm it's causing to ordinary Canadians?
We had a little bit of a technical glitch. Normally, if you can hear the question, but I believe the question kind of, it had a little bit of a jitter there. I'll ask the Honourable Member for Abbotsford to ask the whole question again, please.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for Canadians, this budget will not deliver economic growth. The growth we will see is not build back better. It's build back bigger. Bigger debt, bigger deficits, bigger spending, bigger government. And with inflation around the corner, higher interest rates and higher taxes are a real worry for families who can't afford housing or struggle with debt. Why does this Liberal government not see the harm it's causing to Canadian families?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with great respect, if the honourable member is worried we'll build back bigger, I can reassure him that we will build back with bigger growth. We will build back with bigger prosperity. We will build back with bigger jobs numbers. The chief economist at RBC has described the upcoming year as one of profound economic recovery. The reality is we have put measures in place that are going to support Canadians through this pandemic and set the stage for a recovery that is robust, sustainable, and inclusive. If the honourable member can't get on board with that plan, then I'd suggest he revisit things.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, on August 17th, Quebec's economy and labour ministers wrote to Ottawa demanding that the federal government work toward a negotiated solution at the Port of Montreal. They asked federal ministers to exercise their leadership in order to facilitate a resolution. What did the federal government do for 8 months to exercise leadership before it came up with this special legislation? How many times did the minister meet with the parties? How many times did Ottawa publicly call for a resolution? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, here we're talking about jobs, economic stability, the reputation of the Port of Montreal, and the economy of Quebec as a whole. So we need to take action. If the Bloc Québécois doesn't want to help, they should at least get out of the way and let us do the work, because we need to get this moving again. The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, here we're talking about leadership. And if there had been some real leadership, we would have gotten things moving again. But when it was time to do the work, the Minister of Labour had already thrown in the towel. More than a month ago, according to La Presse, the minister was already planning to use special legislation and had presented an emergency plan to Cabinet. So what real effort has the minister made in the past month to resolve the conflict? And what incentive did the parties have to come to an agreement, knowing that the federal government had already announced that it would be introducing this special legislation? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, we have been working here, encouraging dialogue, trying to find a common solution, but now we need to take action. And for one time here, the Bloc Québécois could make a real difference. Rather than just talking, they could actually make a real difference by supporting the government's efforts and the Quebec government's efforts as well to get the port reopened. People are asking us for action, including the Quebec government. So can they not see the consensus in Quebec? Can they not defend the interests of Quebec here? Or do they just want to abandon Quebecers? The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, we had quite a turnaround last Friday at the Heritage Committee when we were considering Bill C-10 on broadcasting and the Broadcasting Act. Against all odds, the Liberals, with no warning, removed a significant section of the bill that will allow the CRTC to regulate social networks without any clear direction on how that power should be used. We all know that the Liberals don't like being criticized, but why would they want to attack the freedoms of internet users on social networks? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to read some of the extracts from debates in the House from November 2020. The member opposite was criticizing Bill C-10. He said, but this isn't in the bill, and nothing would allow us to regulate social media or platforms like YouTube. So I don't understand. One day the Conservatives say that we need to regulate platforms like YouTube, and the next day they say, no, let's not regulate. So can the Conservative Party of Canada make up its mind? The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, this minister really likes to take things out of context. What the Liberals are not saying is that we need to listen to experts. But here is what Michael Geist said. He's a professor emeritus from the University of Ottawa. He said it's hard to understand the level of hubris or incompetence that would lead someone to believe that such an encroachment on rights is justified. He said it undermines fundamental democratic rights. So what does the minister have to say to these experts who are saying that this is an attack on people's rights? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the member for Richmond North Athabasca didn't answer his own quotation here, asking us to intervene. It just doesn't make any sense. We've always said that users of platforms would be excluded. That's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. So platforms that act as broadcasters would not be subject to this regulation. That's what we've said from the very beginning, and that's what we're doing.
Lethbridge, please lower your mic. There we go. Perfect. I'm afraid the honourable member's on mute. Oh, we're not hearing a thing. I'll look over to the technical folks if they can make out what it is. maybe check on the bottom corner. There's 2 places to mute, sometimes on the headset itself and sometimes on the program.
My apologies. Thank you.
Very good. The Honourable Member.
The minister is misleading the House. Amendments are being proposed that change this legislation from what it was in the fall. The current government has shown an ever-increasing disregard for the rights and freedoms of Canadians. Under Bill C-10, they are now wanting to amend the Broadcasting Act to allow for government censorship of video content on social media. According to the minister, it's all about restricting content that, quote, undermines Canada's social cohesion. But what does that even mean? Soon, they'll create Ministry of Truth, which just sounds like a weird cult, let's be honest. So why is the Prime Minister trampling on the rights and freedoms of Canadians? And why is this minister choosing to mislead Canadians?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the member opposite is very confused because Bill C-10 is about the Broadcasting Act. It has nothing to do with online harms, which is another bill that will be introduced. And I am confused because Conservative Party of Canada has asked us a number of times to intervene so that we can prevent online child pornography, which is exactly what we want to do. So are they saying that they're opposed to us trying to act on that, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Again, the minister is trying to mislead Canadians. It's incredibly inappropriate and damaging. This is a quote. It's difficult to contemplate the levels of moral hubris, incompetence, or both that would lead people to believe such infringement of rights is justifiable. End quote. That's what the former commissioner of the CRTC had to say. Government control over user-generated content and apps is a complete violation of our charter rights. Is this the kind of country that the Prime Minister is trying to, quote, reimagine? And if so, then when will he reimagine a free society where our charter rights are respected?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, it's the member opposite who's trying to mislead Canadians. We've said from the beginning, when we introduced Bill C-10, that user-generated content would be excluded, but that online platforms who act as broadcasters would be included in the legislation. This is exactly what the amendments that have been debated in the committee are trying to do, and that's what we will do, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
This government has encouraged unbelievable profiteering during this pandemic. Canada's billionaires have increased their wealth by over $78 billion, yet this government refuses to follow the lead of other countries and put in place a wealth tax. Now the Parliamentary Budget Officer has released new figures on how much a pandemic profits tax would bring. It's $8 billion, more than enough to put a roof over every Canadian's head and eliminate homelessness in Canada. Yet Liberals refuse yet again to curb profiteering. Why do Liberals always give a free ride to the ultra-rich?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me correct the record. I'll remind the honourable member that in 2015, when we raised taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could cut them for the middle class, the NDP voted against it. When we implemented the Canada Child Benefit and improved finances for 9 out of 10 families and stopped sending childcare checks to millionaires, the NDP voted against it. When we increased investments in the CRA to combat tax evasion, the NDP voted against it. The budget includes measures that will support vulnerable Canadians and does not ask and will ask the wealthiest Canadians to pay more. I trust the NDP will buck the historical trend and support the budget when they have the opportunity.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this government is almost 2 years late releasing a national action plan to uphold the calls to justice of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. And what do we see? Internal emails showing a continuation of a fragmented, uncoordinated response by the RCMP, a failure to address Call to Justice 9.5. COVID is not an excuse. Indigenous women and girls, 2S LGBTQIA individuals continue to go missing and murdered. When will this government release a national action plan to stop this ongoing genocide?
Honourable Minister.
I thank the member for the question, and
as always, our hearts are with the survivors, the families, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, Two-Spirit and gender diverse people, and they're helping us develop the best possible effective and accountable national action plan. In the response to the first ever national public inquiry on this ongoing national tragedy, our government is working with all provincial and territorial governments, as well as Indigenous leaders, survivors, and families to develop that national action plan that will set a clear roadmap to ensure that Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people are safe wherever they live. And
the honourable member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, did you know that 90% of Canadian seafood goes through small craft harbours, and Canada's fish harvesters depend on these facilities to support their livelihoods? Well, my constituents do. Small craft harbours in my riding are the lifeblood of rural communities and industry hubs for shipping, trade, fishing, recreation and other marine sectors. Can the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans tell us what our government is doing to invest in small craft harbours?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question and also for his hard work with regards to his advocacy for fisheries and seafood workers right across the country. Mr. Speaker, 7 million people live in our rural coastal communities, and we know how important our small craft harbours are to our communities. That's why our government is investing $300 million through Budget 2021 to make sure that we can renew and revitalize these small craft harbours that are so critical to our coastal communities. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be part of a government that recognizes how important this is to rural Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last week this government made more big promises on how they're going to retrain workers and get them back to work in droves. Yet they haven't told us what jobs these will be, who will employ them, or how long that retraining will take. Can the minister please tell us what specific jobs Canadians are being reskilled for?
Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The nature of work and the way businesses operate are indeed changing at an ever-increasing speed. That's why in Budget 2021, we are investing nearly $2.5 billion to help employers train and reskill people, help workers transition to new jobs, enhance foundational and transferable skills, and create a new apprenticeship service for the trades. We are creating 500,000 new training work opportunities, including 215,000 new job and training opportunities for youth, supporting businesses in the most affected sectors such as tourism and arts and culture, and accelerating investments in digital transformation of small and medium-sized businesses. This is how we're putting our government on track to meet our commitment to create 1 million jobs by the end of this year.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, well, that was all over the map. And I'll give a little advice. There's numerous energy projects across this country awaiting approval. Now, these are real projects, real jobs. Thousands of them, in fact, are shovel-ready and employ those who already have the skills. Now, while we're waiting for the government's great master plan to reskill Canadians, can we at least get these Canadians back to work now?
Honourable Minister.
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, that's why we're investing in sectors and communities and specific job transitions. We're investing in young people. We're investing in people with disabilities. We have a comprehensive plan that's not scattered or all over the map. It's just comprehensive. And perhaps the Conservatives haven't seen such a plan before. We're creating jobs. We're training and upskilling workers, and we will continue to be there for Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, Greg runs an auto service business in Calgary that opened in late 2019, just before COVID, and does not qualify for assistance. This government's continuing failure to deliver vaccines and rapid results screening tests to safely reopen the economy means that more and more businesses are at risk of failing, and the ones that were brand new when the pandemic hit are among the worst affected. The budget contains nothing for these businesses that are still denied support because they opened just before COVID. Why?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question. We have made a number of supports to help businesses from the very beginning, whether it's programs like the wage subsidy, the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, or the Emergency Business Account. We realize that there continues to be challenges for certain businesses, but we've made investments to ensure that their communities can open up safely and are continuing to make investments, as he mentioned, in vaccines, and we've now seen more than 13.8 million doses delivered directly to the provinces. We're going to continue to work to find solutions to support businesses to make sure that they're here on the back end of this pandemic so the recovery will help the economy come roaring back.
The honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
There's nothing in that answer that will help Greg's business. I raised this issue in question period in February. The Parliamentary Secretary for Small Business said that they were working on it. I raised the issue at Finance in March, and the Deputy Prime Minister admitted that they have failed businesses like Greg's. There's been a speech from the Throw in a Fall economic statement, and finally a budget, and there's still nothing. They've admitted that there is a problem. That's the first step. When will they actually do something?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are very aware of this situation. I want to thank my colleague for raising the important issue. When we created emergency relief programs, our government sought to support as many Canadian businesses as possible, as quickly as possible. At the same time, we know that all of these programs needed to be designed so we can also ensure their integrity as we ensure they're reaching as many businesses as is humanly possible. This can be a very challenging balance to strike, and we're working to find that balance so we can support new businesses as well as those millions who've already received support.
L'honorable député de Pierre Boucher.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, in this morning's edition of La Presse, the CEO of CN says the impact of the strike at the Port of Montreal won't be as bad as feared because we've all seen this coming for weeks. Businesses have rerouted their cargo to other ports like Halifax, and shipping routes have been altered. Everyone's just waiting for the dispute to degenerate. I'm just going to interrupt the honourable member. We seem to be having a technical problem. I'd ask him to start his question over because we missed part of it. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, in this morning's edition of La Presse, the CEO of CN says the impact of the strike at the Port of Montreal won't be as bad as feared because we've all seen this coming for weeks. Businesses have rerouted their cargo to other ports like Halifax, and shipping routes have been altered. Everyone's just waiting for the dispute to degenerate ever since the federal government indicated a month ago that it was prepared to table back to work legislation. Why have they completely abdicated leadership in favor of sitting back and waiting for the talks to fail? Where has the Prime Minister been? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've been there from the beginning. As far back as 2.5 years ago, we've been helping the parties to negotiate. There have been 100 sessions with the federal negotiator, and there's a consensus in Quebec, the government of Quebec and Ottawa and economic circles. Everyone wants workers and families. Everybody agrees we need to protect the economy and we need to move forward. The Bloc has an opportunity here, an opportunity to stand up and pitch in and help us move forward. But no, they won't do that. They just want to play partisan politics here. It's time to get rid of the Bloc in Quebec. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Well, every time this government's involved in a dispute, it degenerates into an economic crisis. Last year, the labour dispute at CN was allowed to drag on until the propane shortage put farmers' crops at risk. They let the wet-so-wetting crisis get so bad, the Prime Minister even recommended setting in the police to break up Indigenous protesters. And today, they're watching the talks at the Port of Montreal and waiting for a deadlock to introduce back-to-work legislation. Is it really too much to ask for the Prime Minister to try governing? The Honourable Minister, look, why don't they stand up for Quebec instead of just grumbling and picking quarrels? We're talking about economic stability here. The reputation of the Port of Montreal and Montreal itself are at stake. This is of huge economic importance. The Bloc should listen to the government of Quebec, to economic circles, to families and workers and everyone who's worried. If the Bloc isn't willing to help, they should get out of the way and we'll do the job on behalf of the Quebec economy. It's time to unblock Quebec.
Kenyon.
Mr. Speaker, home ownership is becoming impossible for Canadians to attain. a trend that has only grown exponentially worse over the course of the pandemic. The stats back this up. CREA reports that the national average home price rose 31.6% compared to March of last year. Why has the Liberal government's 2021 budget completely ignored first-time home buyers and the housing needs of young Canadians?
Honourable Minister.
It's very good to see the Conservatives finally talk about housing. I remember a Prime Minister called Stephen Harper who told me once as a reporter to go read the Constitution because housing wasn't a federal responsibility. But let me assure the member opposite that not only will we taken steps to invest in first-time buyers and supporting them cross the bridge to home ownership, not only will we invest the $75 billion in a national housing strategy to make rent more affordable. Not only will we put a tax on foreign speculators in the Canadian housing market, we are not done yet. There are new steps to be taken. We believe in making sure Canadians have a choice, and that choice should be safe and affordable and secure. We will get this done. We will not take advice from the Conservatives who are missing in action for 10 years.
The honourable member for Mission Matsky Fraser Canyon.
And Mr. Speaker, I would take no advice from the member opposite who believes that foreign buyers have a better accessibility to purchasing a home in Canada than a young Canadian. I could go all day about the failures of this government to address young home buyers. The new housing program hasn't even made the changes yet to address the rising house prices in Vancouver. Why is this government failing young Canadians? Why is this government losing hope for young Canadians who just want a secure place to raise their family?
Honourable Minister.
You know, it's funny, the party opposite misunderstands identifying a problem with being happy about that situation. The issue was described as a serious issue, and as in the budget we just tabled, we are taking steps to address it. We're also taking steps to address money laundering. We're also taking steps to strengthen FinTrack to make sure that foreign speculation does not distort the housing market and protects Canadians. Our job as a government is to build a housing system based on our human rights approach that gives Canadians the choice whether they want to rent or own, and to support that choice with programs that facilitate the realization of that dream. The party opposite, not only were they missing in action, they might want to take a look at their role in income trust and what role that's playing in the distortion of the housing market. Jim Flaherty might have a few words.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, exports are responsible for 1 in 5 jobs in Canada and nearly a third of our GDP. Robust trade not only provides economic security for families and businesses, but will help reduce our massive federal debt. Despite being critical to our economic recovery, trade appears to be an afterthought in the budget. This isn't a surprise. This same government missed the deadline to implement the trade continuity agreement with the UK and still has not negotiated a Buy America exemption. Why did the government fail to make trade a priority in its recent budget?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to take this question because only a few weeks ago, Canada ranked number 2 in the entire world in terms of foreign direct investment attractiveness. We take our exporters very seriously in this country. They are an integral part of our economy and will form an integral part of our economic relaunch. We are certainly going to continue supporting our exporters, and when it comes to having their backs, this government has consistently been there for them, as we will continue to be through the other side of this pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, our government tabled Budget 2021. It's one of the most important budgets in generations. It's a plan to invest in students, young people, families, and vulnerable people from coast to coast to coast. Beyond the pandemic, job creation will be a key feature of our economics recovery. Could the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion tell the House what this government's doing to bring the number of jobs in Canada back to their pre-pandemic level? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle for her advocacy on behalf of her constituents. Mr. Speaker, our budget is a plan that invests in growth for all Canadians and an economic recovery that leaves no one behind. We're investing close to $2.5 billion to help train and reskill workers and help Canadians transition to new jobs. We're also creating 500,000 new training and employment opportunities, including 215,000 opportunities for young people. In addition, we're extending the wage subsidy and creating the Canada Recovery Hiring Program to help businesses hire and retain workers. Mr. Speaker, we hope we are on track to keep our commitment to create 1 million jobs by the end of the year.
The Minister of Finance has stated, because interest rates are low, Canada can afford this massive debt and enormous, endless deficits. She seems oblivious to the fact that interest rates have nowhere to go but up. Finance Minister Paul Martin stated that, and I quote, "The debt and the deficit are not inventions of ideology. They are facts of arithmetic. The quicksand of compound interest is real," end quote. Mr. Speaker, future generations who have to pay this massive debt want to know if Paul Martin was wrong or the current minister.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there is no question that the emergency measures we put forward to support Canadians during an unprecedented public health and economic crisis have been expensive, but doing too little would have been far more expensive. I'd point the honourable member to the report of the IMF that indicates had we not put forward these measures, our deficit would be of the same scale, but our economy would have experienced economic scarring that would have hamstrung our recovery for a generation. I'd point the honourable member as well to the recent reaffirmation of our AAA investment grade credit rating from the major credit rating agencies. It turns out those socialists at the credit rating agencies also believe that supporting families during their time of need and keeping workers on
The honourable
member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the government has failed on another file, foreign workers. They awarded a sole source contract to a unilingual English-speaking company in Toronto for all their COVID tests. There's a business in my riding that's been waiting 19 days now for something that's only supposed to take 14 days. For 5 days, my constituent has been trying in vain to get through to somebody. I know the minister is going to tell me they've signed another contract, but that doesn't solve the problem for those who are still waiting on Switch Health. What does the minister have to say to businesses in my riding? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, all federal departments have worked together to accelerate the entry of all foreign temporary workers, and we have launched a new partnership with Dynacare to facilitate COVID tests for temporary foreign workers arriving by plane. And as of April 8th, support services will be dedicated in English and French and other languages. This agreement will help meet the increased demand for tests in the months to come. The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, temporary workers have been delayed coming to Canada and reaching farms in Quebec. They're still waiting for supposedly rapid test results from a company that, in addition to being slow, only operates in English. Mr. Speaker, precious time wasted and flagrant disrespect from this government for our French-speaking farmers in Quebec. What's the government going to do to accelerate the process for those already waiting and to serve Francophones properly? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I just said, as of April 28th, Dynacare will be offering temporary foreign workers dedicated support services in French, English, and other languages. This agreement will help meet the increased demand in the months to come and support essential sectors like agriculture and protect the health and safety of temporary foreign workers as well as Canadians.
For Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, Brampton has been one of the hardest hit communities by the pandemic in Ontario. We have been on lockdown since November. Right now, we have a test positivity rate of 22%, and the situation remains difficult. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance tell this House how Budget 2021 will help hotspots like Brampton get through the pandemic and help the community to recover once this pandemic is over?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question and for her ongoing advocacy for the people of Brampton. The uptick that we've seen in case numbers in her community and frankly across parts of the country is deeply concerning. I point to the fact that we've invested billions of dollars now to expand EI sickness benefits and implement the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit so families don't need to choose between earning a paycheck and protecting their health. We've now implemented over 13.8 million doses of vaccines in Canadian communities, and we're continuing to make investments like through the Safe Restart Agreement with nearly $19 billion to make sure that Canadians can return to work. As we go forward, we're going to continue to support Canadians in their time of need and ensure that their health and well-being is our first priority.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
The Housing Parliamentary Secretary admitted that Canada is, quote, a very safe market for foreign investment, but not a great market for Canadians looking for choices around housing. He also said that Canada's housing market is, quote, driven by speculation. The cost of housing in Canada has increased by 31% over the last year alone. This 1% vacant homes tax for non-Canadians living outside of Canada is not going to cut it. Will the government increase this tax, bring in a foreign buyer's tax, and put in new money for the construction of social housing for those in core need?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, having just heard the NDP House Leader talk about solving the housing crisis with an $8 billion investment, I'm a little reluctant to take the advice of the NDP on housing policy. After all, they've already spent that money on pharmacare, fighting climate change, basic income. I'm not sure quite how far one simple tax will stretch. But the issue is this. We are focused on delivering housing to Canadians that they can afford, that's safe and that's secure. We're working on rental housing. We're working on first-time home buyers. We're working on making sure the market is regulated back to shape so that foreign investors don't find a home before Canadians do, because our goal is to get every Canadian a home. That's what the National Housing Strategy is investing in.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Climate targets aren't about politics, they're about science. And even though Canada has improved our target last week at Biden's climate summit, we are not aligned with the science. Speaker after speaker at that summit made it clear that we must achieve the bulk of reductions this decade if we're going to hold to 1.5 degrees. So my question to the government is, will the Prime Minister be open to changing Bill C-12 with a specific target due on 2025 baked into the bill?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we support enhanced reporting to ensure we're on track to meeting our newly announced national determined contributions for 2030. To this end, we have proposed embedding Canada's new target for 2030 directly into the Act, which is 40 to 45% below 2005 emission levels. Mr. Speaker, climate change is an urgent issue and we must work together on it. We hope that the Green Party will support the bill at second reading so that we can continue to work constructively to further strengthen the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's all the time we have today for question period. C'est tout le temps que nous avons. A point of order, the Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in our rules of order and decorum, Standing Order 18 specifically says remarks which question a member's integrity, honesty or character are not in order. During a questioning of the Minister of Canadian Heritage, on a number of occasions it was referred to him as misleading the House. When somebody accuses somebody else of misleading the House, it certainly, at least in my opinion, would suggest that their integrity and indeed their honesty is being questioned in that regard. I don't think it's necessary at this point to call out those members that were doing that, but I think that it might be beneficial for you to remind members of that particular Standing Order 18 so that we can perhaps correct this moving forward.
On the same point of order, un rappel au règlement, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member.
Of order by my colleague, and in a certain way, I do agree with him, but I would suggest him to talk to his Prime Minister, because the member of Papineau is always using that kind of argument when we're asking questions. He did that today.
I want to thank the Honourable Members for bringing that point up. I do want to remind the Honourable Members that in the Chamber, we are setting an example for Canadians, for children, for anybody who's watching. And we don't want to send an example that we're arguing the ideas, not calling names. And that's something that the rules point out. I understand that sometimes we tend to forget. and get caught up in the moment. But I want to remind everyone that the respect that we have here is something that permeates throughout the country. And it's important that we set the example. Merci. I'm now prepared to rule on the point of order raised on April 14, 2021 by the member for Saanich Gulf Islands concerning the participation of independent members and members of non-recognized parties in oral questions. Following up on the point of order that she raised on February 16th concerning their participation in oral questions on Wednesday, on which I ruled on February 23rd. The member focused on the number of questions allocated to them during each sitting week. Since the number of independent members and members of non-recognized parties has risen from 4 to 8 since the beginning of the Parliament, she feels that the number of questions should also increase. Étant responsable d'un
As the one responsible for keeping deliberations running smoothly, the chair is aware of the number and distribution of questions allocated during question